Today I'm going to read from Birthmarked, from chapter 7. I chose chapter 7 because I think it's a very exciting and interesting chapter. Chapter 7, Noon. "Oh my gosh, she's huge," said Bertha Clare. "Would you hush up?" Rita snapped. "It's an abomination." Gaia's outrage surpassed her shock. By her guess, the woman was due to deliver within days. She could not fathom any crime that would merit such a punishment. Why couldn't the enclave wait another week, 2 at most, until after she had delivered? They must all realize that killing the mother would mean killing her innocent baby too. Instinctively, she stepped down from the arcade and began to walk toward the platform. A guard threw a burlap bag over the man's face. "This verdict is wrong," the prisoner yelled. "It's our right to marry and our right to have a child." Gaia could see that his wife say something softly to him. With his hands tied behind him and the sack over his face, he leaned toward her, and then Gaia saw something that broke her heart. The condemned man blindly shuffled his foot over toward his wife's until his boot met hers. His wife began to cry. The guard threw a second burlap sack over her face. "No," Gaia breathed. I wonder why no one else feels the way that Gaia is feeling about the pregnant woman and her husband being sentenced to death. The prisoner cried out again, his voice breaking. "Spare my wife! I'm begging you! Spare my child!" Gaia looked around, incredulous that no one was intervening. It was a torture game, wasn't it? They couldn't really go through this. She took another step forward, stumbling against a bearded man. "Watch yourself," he snapped. Gaia heard a disturbance from the prisoners by the jail, and she looked over to see her mother's face. Her mother had pushed forward to the fence and gripped it with both hands. She was staring hard at Gaia across the crowded square. "Mother," Gaia whispered. She expected her mother to yell, to say something to the guard, who was now fitting a noose around the male prisoner's neck. But her mother looked only at Gaia with a mute, pleading expression. She shook her head slightly, her lips bitten inward, and Gaia knew clearly what the message was. Do nothing. Shocked, Gaia took another step toward the platform. The guard was putting a second noose over the pregnant woman's head now. When Gaia saw her mother, she had to have been relieved that she was still alive, and she had to have hope that she would be able to save her mother and get her mother released from prison. And she also had to feel torn between, should I do nothing as the gaze my mother suggests, or do I go with what I feel is right and do something to stop the murder of the 2 prisoners? "Stop!" Gaia said. The people around her turned and withdrew from her. Their expressions were a mix of confusion and contempt. She took another step forward and held out her hand. "No!" she cried, but a hand on her arm held her back. "Idiot!" came a voice in her ear. "You want to see us all killed?" Gaia, frozen, turned to her right and found Rita's scratching eyes millimeters from her own. She watched as Rita's glare widened in surprise at her scar, and then Rita released her arm. On the platform, the 2 prisoners, hooded and noosed, stood side by side, their feet touching. The woman's head bowed beneath her hood as if she were crying, and her belly, enormous under her gray dress, seemed to shake her with grief. It took a lot of bravery for Gaia to shout, to stop, and to say no, especially when she knows that she's breaking the law just by being there. She's more likely to get imprisoned if she is seen, let alone by standing up and shouting when no one else in the crowd is. At 16, I don't think I would have been that brave. At 16, we're still very young and curious and somewhat immature. Gaia is brave beyond her own years. And I wonder what else she's going to go to. What other types of lengths and bravery she will show as the book goes on. Gaia looked to the people at the bastion, and her shock turned to horror. No one was stopping the execution. It seemed impossible, but someone there must have ordered this murder. Why? Glancing toward the black cloud from Sergeant Gray, she was startled to find his eyes upon her and Rita. In that instant, she perceived that he knew, somehow, who she was. Stop this, she thought, aiming all the power of her outrage in his direction. His hand clenched on his rifle strap, but otherwise he did nothing. Her gaze shot back to the platform as the guard spoke in a loud and terrible voice. Patrick Carriot and Loretta Shepherd, you are found guilty of the most pernicious crime against the state. In flagrant disregard to the laws of the enclave and the natural order, you have violated the Genetic Screening Act for advanced citizens. You have married your siblings, and you have incestuously conceived a genetic abomination. For this, the sentence is death. Let you be an example to others who would so defy the will of the enclave. There was one last cry from the man, a protest that Gaia could not understand, for it was cut off by a banging noise as the trapdoor beneath the prisoners was released as they both dropped to their deaths. Well, now we know that they were sentenced to death because they married and conceived a child, and unfortunately they were siblings without knowing because of the babies that have to be given to the enclave. You would think that instead of killing these people, it would be a sign to the enclave that they need to change something about how they get their babies. I mean, the people from the outside are forced to give up their babies, and there's no sort of record, there's no sort of data besides the genetic screening to tell if they're related or not. Shouldn't there be a warning before you meet someone and fall in love with them, that you could be related to them? What could the enclave do to change this so that they wouldn't have to sentence people to death in such horrible circumstances?